I don't know what happened to your camera. What'd you do to your camera, Ryan? You're gone
I didn't
already.
touch it. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I didn't do anything.
What the heck? Are you sure?
Yeah, I didn't touch anything. I was looking at my phone.
Can't see you. I cannot see you. But that's okay. We'll figure this out. There we go. How about that?
There we go.
That'll work. That'll work for tonight. Anyway, hey, dude, it's been a minute. It's been a minute since we've done this. What happened to your camera, man? Everything was great, and now it's all.
Looks fine from my angle.
Okay, good. Let's just leave it there.
You zoomed in on me.
I did. All right. Anyway, hey, welcome back everybody to the Nostalgically Hip Podcast. I think tonight's topic's gonna be a lot of fun, dude. So Mixtape Volume 1 was a pretty good success. It seemed to be the most popular podcast that we've done, and it looks like we're gonna knock out number 2. Are you sleeping on me, dude? What's happening?
No, I'm texting. I'm trying to line us up some more fans.
All right. I don't know what you're doing. I was like, fuck, he's falling asleep already?
No,
Jesus
that's Joe
Christ.
Biden. I don't do that. That's Joe Biden.
Anyway, the topic tonight is Mixtape Volume 2. So like I was saying when you were ignoring me earlier, that, while you were, popular, cool. A lot of people liked it. A lot of comments on it. So let's do it. But for the mixtape tonight, what we're going to do is, you know what we're going to do. They don't know what we're going to do, but we do. We're going to do soundtracks of the 80s. Don't all speak at once.
Do you need my commentary? Yeah.
Soundtracks. That's kind of how this podcasting works. You get to talk back when I kind of.
Yeah, you're giving the intro and I'm just sitting here. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Soundtracks, because that's a good one, right? It's not quite. It's not quite mixtapes 2, which we were discussing, but we got soundtracks. So I think I got some good ones. I think I got.
Well, I guess it depends, man. I mean, you can still call it a mixtape, right? Because you'd still wait to try to catch all those songs, and because if you weren't rich or you didn't have a lot of money all the time, you couldn't afford to go out and buy the soundtrack, right?
Yeah, I mean, what was a tape back then, right? Like when I was a kid, it was like $7, and that was. I mean, nobody was paying our way back then. It wasn't like today. So
that's right.
You'd spend that $7 and you would hope for the best. And in the 80s, you generally didn't get it. Every now and again, you'd get you'd get lucky, and there'd be like a good album, and it's like striking gold, man. Right?
Well, you're totally rolling the dice for sure.
Yeah. Like if you bought like. I'm trying to think. Any album outside of like a U2 or somebody that was like a already established band, you were definitely rolling the dice on that.
Yeah, and 9 times out of 10, the damn what you got, you make 1 or 2 good songs maybe, and then the rest was crap, and you're like, what the? Why buy this crap?
That's a great idea for a future podcast. Would be to talk about how many times we bit the bullet or jumped on the grenade on that. Like, I can think of quite a few albums that I bought thinking going into it, like, this is going to be so good. And then later on realizing that there was one song that I was going to continually listen to over and over and not listen to the rest of them. And the 80s was filled with that. But that would be a great one to come up with the worst, the biggest letdown.
I'm laughing because I can't remember what I had for breakfast yesterday.
Yeah.
Let alone what I spent money on.
Well, I can. So.
Well, all right. Well,
yeah, I got a long list of those because I was a big music person, and there was nothing better to me than opening that cassette tape. You wanted to see the lyrics and you wanted to hear the songs, and then you were like, wow, that's it. And you knew generally at the end of every album that you listened to, you knew you were never going to listen to that again.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. definitely. You know, so when we get into these, some of the albums that I chose or the soundtracks doesn't I like the music, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I like the movie. I'm not going to say I didn't watch the movie, but yeah, the music was great. The movie, maybe not so much.
Yeah, I think I'm going the same route on that, right? Like, because I think there's going to be some I probably did like the movie, but I'm not going to admit it on live television. So there's that.
I think you know which one I'm talking about on my list. But I do have an honorable mention that I forgot to put on the list that I sent you. And that's exactly the one I'm talking mainly about, as I didn't really care for the movie, but the music was great. But I'll get to that last. So let's see. Let's jump into the 80s, man. What'd you have as your first pick?
Yeah, so we were discussing this, and it was kind of a last minute thing. So I was kind of trying to slap together stuff as quick as I could. And I was bouncing around the ideas, and then I was also trying to think of what you were probably going to come up with. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to have the same thing. So I wanted to be more original, and I wanted to sound like I knew what I was talking about more. And then one came to mind because I never had it, but I knew a lot of people did. And it was the Valley Girl soundtrack. I think the movie was 83, but
Nicolas Cage,
and I don't know what was the girl's name. Probably should look that up, but
I can see her face, but I don't remember her name.
Can you remember the music at all? Can you remember any of the songs?
If you named one, I almost guaranteed I would.
Well, one I know for a fact because MTV had just I think had just come on, but it was in its mainstream popularity, and the band was on all the time, and that was Modern English, and the name of the song was "I Melt with You." That was on like 24/7, and but there were so many. Like I'm looking at it, there was Berlin, Pleasure Victim. You had the Thompson Twins, In the Name of Love. They were huge back then. Do you remember them? The Thompson Twins.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, man. And that was probably one of those bands I wouldn't have admitted to liking, along with the Culture Club.
Right.
Who's on this? They're on here too, right? Culture Club is on here with "Do You Really Want to Hurt Me?" So that I don't know if that must have been about the same time that album was really popular, because that song was on the radio all the time. Mm-hmm. And then there was a Clash, man, rocking the Casbah, which somebody shocked me because I didn't remember them being on there, but when I looked at it, I was like, yeah, that definitely was a thing. Josie Cotton was Johnny. Now this one wouldn't fly today, but Johnny, Are You Queer? Remember that song?
That song. I sure do.
Yeah, that was a big one and a big part. There was Eddie Grant, Electric Avenue.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the. Okay, right? Now you just sparked a memory for me, because I bought that cassette because of that song, and all the other songs
on the list.
Sucked.
Yep, that definitely goes. That was a one-hit wonder. That was that was on that tape, man, or album, whatever you want to call it. But and then the Psychedelic Furs, which were they were big. I still like those guys. Love My Way was on there. I mean, that's a pretty big list right there. So,
I almost watched that movie the other day. It popped up on Tubi.
Yeah,
I almost watched it.
I watched it during COVID, and it seemed a little long. Like I don't remember it being so long. Like there were some parts I probably could have edited out, but it's still a good movie. That nostalgia.
Oh, for sure, man. And if I'm not mistaken, was that Nicolas Cage's first role ever?
I don't know. Probably not.
I think his first major role, right? That he actually
probably a starring role, yeah, for sure. I would guess. I know he was even pretty big back then. Like he was in, what was it, Rumblefish? Was that?
I don't know.
And his uncle was Francis Ford Coppola, right? So he got a lot of work through him. But sure, I thought that was a good one to kind of start it out with, because I didn't have it, but I know a lot of people did, and I wish I would have had it. But I had, like we talked about, I had to pick and choose. I couldn't get every album known to man. But
right, yeah, no, man, that's I didn't realize it had so many good songs on it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And there's also another one too by the Plimsolls, and it was it's when they're in a bar. It's like called A Million Miles Away, and he takes her because they were like what 18, and Nicolas Cage was getting into bars and getting drunk, and that song was on the background. I remember thinking when I was watching that as a kid, going, "That's a good song," you know. But I didn't even put that on here, but there were so many.
So my first pick, I'm going to say that first of all, it's not the normal genre of music that I would probably listen to most of the time. It's very pop, but the song they played them so much on the radio back then that you just couldn't help but to hear it, and they're kind of like guilty pleasure songs. You know, it kind of grew on me like a fungus. But the movie, I saw the movie, didn't really care for it, but the movie's Footloose.
Yeah.
With Kevin Bacon. And of course, Kenny Loggins, man, back then, he was just crushing it, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was the soundtrack king, right? You could go on and on about him, right? Like he was doing Caddyshack in the late 70s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing that. And I think he kind of got on a string of just Over the Top. Remember Over the Top?
Oh, yeah.
He did that. Yeah. Yeah, he was the soundtrack king.
Man, you know he banked
Top Gun, too,
big
right?
time money off of that. But
Yeah.
Anyway, so Footloose, of course, is the main song by Mr. Loggins there. Here again, this is a poppy song, but it's a guilty pleasure. Let's hear it for the boys.
Yeah.
By Denise Williams.
Yeah.
You know, it's just an upbeat, happy fucking song, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and that's one of those ones that I meant. Like you don't tell people you listen to that, but
Right.
but you do.
Right. That's why, you know, I'm breaking down a wall here, people. Go ahead and laugh at me. I really don't care. I'll cry in the fetal position later. But now here we go. Foreigner, right? Foreigner had a song on there, Waiting for a Girl Like You.
Oh yeah. And that was huge.
Oh,
back
yeah.
then. Yeah.
And that's kind of when they went soft, in my opinion.
Yeah, they had what was it, Foreigner? They had a great selection of albums. Then Foreigner 4 was a big one, right? And then they started going. What was the name of that one? Waiting for a Girl Like You.
Waiting for a Girl Like You, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that on the Records album? I think I don't
Probably.
remember, but that was kind of like their. It wasn't completely soft, you know, but it was kind of heading that way, and then they started. I don't know, man. You know, so much for Hot Blooded and Cold as Ice and Jukebox Hero. Now we have all these mushy freaking love songs, and
Yeah.
somebody was whipped. Almost Paradise by Mike Reno and
Mike Reno.
Ann Wilson. Yep. And
Mike
then,
Reno, famous for Loverboy before that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was his first solo effort. He was asked to write that song.
I think I'm not sure on that, but I'll take your word for it because it
Yeah.
sounds about right. You're not selling cars, are you?
No.
Okay,
no.
good.
Loverboy
And then
albums.
This last song, I put it last on the list on purpose because it's still relevant today. You hear it all the time, and that's "Holding Out for a Hero" by Bonnie Tyler.
Bonnie
you know?
Tyler. Yeah.
You see it on these singing shows. It's all over karaoke. If you got karaoke, hell, the radio stations still play it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and since we're talking about Bonnie Tyler, we need to talk about what was the other one?
Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Yeah, I had that tape. I bought
Did
that
you
tape.
really?
Yeah, and as far as I can recall, maybe it holds up more, but I was probably 10 at the time. It had that song. It was one of those ones where I just keep replaying, and it's like 15 minutes long, right? So it's so you could just have that song and you'd be okay. It's kind of like at least the A side.
It goes on forever.
Ever, yeah, like a Meatloaf song, right? They
Right.
don't add Meatloaf or Early Yes. Do you remember Early Yes at all? Remember those?
No.
They were like 15, 16 minutes long. The early Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. See, I didn't hear what you said exactly first. I thought you said Early S. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is, man.
No,
Never heard
Yes,
of it before.
Early Yes was like, if you look at an Early Yes album, you'll see like only 4 songs. And you think, God, that's all they made. And then you look at the length, you're like, oh, well, it's just one, you know.
Owner of a Lonely Heart was probably one of their shortest ones.
Yeah. Yeah. They had a lot of changes, I think, and stuff like that. But the early, yes, like the, 60s.
Yeah.
That was a lot of some long stuff. Yeah, for sure.
You get going on that stuff, man.
Let's hear it, though. I interrupted you. So, because I know that Footloose was loaded with absolutely loaded with songs. So
yeah,
I know there's more than that.
There is, but I didn't want to waste time. I mean, I could have put the whole album on there. You know what I mean? But I chose not to because there were other albums that I wanted to hit and highlight.
Quiet Riot, right? They were on there. It's kind of an afterthought, but I think Come On Feel the Noise was on there, or Mental Health maybe.
I don't remember seeing that or hearing that or.
Well, it's kind of like Foreigner, right? Like you forget how big Foreigner was, but you don't really think of Foreigner being on that album until you think about. And I think it's because there's so many other great songs that you just don't think about it.
I'm gonna look it up. Was Quiet Riot on the Footloose soundtrack? Let's see. Interestingly enough, you are correct, sir.
Right? Yeah.
Mental Health.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Holy smokes, man.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
That's weird. Yeah, that's kind of cool. But anyway, yeah. So Footloose again. I've seen the movie probably more than once, but definitely not more than twice.
Bullshit.
Didn't really care for it, but again, yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it was all right. So back in the '80s, I was into I got hooked on the whole, like the kung fu theater shit, and you know what I mean, and ninjas this because that was all the rage in the '80s. Right. And so I was like, man, I don't want a bunch of freaking dudes dancing. I want to see somebody kicking somebody's ass.
For sure.
So
yeah, not then, but it became like because of nostalgia. I look back and now when I put it on, it's basically just one long video of a bunch of songs that we like.
So it just as a prepubescent male child, I was not digging the dancing. I wanted to see some ass kicking.
Yeah. And even if you did like it, you probably wouldn't have told.
Yeah.
All that male toxicity would have just overran everything.
Oh.
Yeah, because we weren't allowed to.
I have something for you about that at the end of the show. I do have something I want to bring up about that. But anyway, so what was your next soundtrack?
Yeah. Let me see here, and I'm not gonna do this one because I think that you'll probably do it. But Top Gun, did you have that?
You know what? I did not. Because of the fact that I thought you would take it.
Well, I'm not going to do it then. Right. I'm going to give you one, dude, that's off. Now, listeners, they'll remember the movie, I'm sure. Maybe they won't, but The Last American Virgin. Do you remember that? I think it was 83. I actually just rewatched it a while back, but I don't think I do. Yeah, the kid, he's it's kind of a heartbreaking movie, man, because like he falls in love with a girl, but then she ends up banging his best friend instead, and then he gets her pregnant and he takes her and gets the abortion with her, and then thinking he's in because he's the nice guy, and then at the end of the movie, the heartbreaking part is and it's like one of the worst of the 80s because it's kind of heartbreaking for real. He shows up at a party and she's back with that guy again, and that's the movie just ends right there.
So that wasn't a movie. That was real life.
It was, it's too close to real life, right? Yeah. But it's floated. I mean, so I'm going to go down the list here. It's got The Cars, Shake It Up. Nice. It's got Gleaming Spires, Are You Ready for the Sex Girls? Which that's also in Revenge of the Nerds, which I got for a honorable mention later on.
Excellent.
Yeah. Police, the do da da da. That's on there.
You said doo-doo.
The Waitresses. I Know What Boys Like is on there. Yeah. Devo Whip It is on there.
Nice.
REO Speedwagon, Keep On Loving You, which that probably was just fresh off of High Infidelity, right? That was on that. So that was they probably just borrowed that. But the Cars, Since You're Gone, Journey, Open Arms, Lionel Richie, Oh No, and then U2, I Will Fall. There's a couple of other ones that I didn't even put on there, but that one always stood out to me because it was on all the time and I watched it, but it's kind of hard to watch because it is kind of heartbreaking, especially when you're a kid. You don't want to see that. All movies in the 80s, especially when it came to love, had a happy ending.
Right.
And that one didn't. And but the album, the songs are there. If you watch the movie, you're like, oh my God, that's in it too. But it's good. So I put that one, on number 2.
There were some great movies and great soundtracks out there for kind of like, I guess, the precursor to goth. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the people that were into The Cure and that kind of stuff. So I tried to stay away from those because those are the ones that mostly everybody remembered, right?
Mm-hmm.
But my next one, of course, you couldn't have an 80s summer go by without having an obligatory war movie of some sort, right? So my next one was Good Morning Vietnam because I love Robin Williams. He was great in that movie, and it was based on a true story. So this is one of the ones that I actually really did like the movie, and I like the soundtrack. And again, I only picked 3 songs for this one because coming down to my last choice, my favorite one, I have a butt ton of them. But anyway, Good Morning Vietnam, I had to pick the obvious James Brown. I feel good.
Okay. Very nice.
Another great classic, Nowhere to Run by Martha Reeves and the Vandellas.
Okay.
And so I don't know how many times you've seen this movie, but when I mention that song or when I mention these songs, I can picture what part of the movie it's in.
Wow, you've seen it that many times.
I've seen it that many times.
Wow. I don't even know if I've seen it once, but did it take place during Vietnam? Is that why the songs are?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I honestly, dude, I was, I remember it being a huge movie for sure. And I remember my parents going to see it, but I don't even know if I know the premise of it, but I don't know if I've ever actually seen the entire thing, but.
So, of course, when you're in the military and you're around a bunch of young fire pissers that are full of testosterone and just want to go out and kill, we watch every damn war movie that's out there, whether it's good or bad. And so we've seen them.
Mm-hmm.
Like the movie Full Metal Jacket, holy shit. I can quote just about every single line in that movie.
Shit.
I've seen it so many times.
Wow.
But that's just how you are, man. That's how the military is. Army, Marines, Navy not so much. But
what else did Good Morning America?
Good Morning America.
Good Morning Vietnam. Good Morning America. Yeah, but did it? So they had to be more, obviously not 80s songs, right? I mean, if it was kind of following the time frame,
there really weren't any 80s songs on there.
Okay.
But you had like there was some CCR on there, and the one that I picked out was the last one I picked out was What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong. Because in the movie when they're playing the song, it's kind of a melancholic moment in the movie, but yet
right.
They're showing sunset and the scenery is beautiful, believe it or not. But so it was just that kind of stuck out my memory, and that's may not be an 80s song, but it was an 80s movie.
What the hell? We're supposed to be. That doesn't count as an 80s soundtrack. You got to list that in the.
Oh, it totally counts because it came out in the 80s. The movie came out in the 80s, therefore it's an 80s soundtrack.
James Brown, I'm thinking Living in America and shit like that. Which we could, I thought about putting some Rocky
I feel
on there.
Good.
Yeah, they're kind of split up, right? Rocky 4, Rocky 3. Yeah.
They're all over the place. I'm going to let you go on this next one, and then I'm going to preface my next group by saying I actually snuck into this movie to see it when I was 11 years old. So anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Shit. I know. I'm gonna say this one because it doesn't have a ton of hits on it. It has one very big hit, but not a ton. But those of us that grew up, then we all know it because it was almost like it was like an epidemic of a movie, and it kind of had like an Elvis vibe to it. But Eddie and the Cruisers.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, and I decided to throw that one in there because my brother had that tape, and him being 10 years older, he could obviously afford more tapes than me. But we'd have to go. I worked for him for a long time in construction, and every day he'd have that fucking tape playing. Because I remember thinking these songs aren't that good, and there's some great songs. Those, On the Dark Side is great,
right?
And then Tender Years is another one that was on there. But there was Run Around Sue and then Wild Summer Nights, which I going back and listening to them, which I did to decide whether I wanted to actually put that in there. I thought I'm going to put that in there for like nostalgic purposes because I had to hear that freaking album so much, dude, that I thought I was going to kill him. And
so just how you were busting my balls for them not really being 80s songs.
Because that was that 50s era? More
like? 50s, 60s.
Yeah, my bad then because,
but it came out.
My list, and I'm like, I'm going to throw that one out there because I think that
it's all good.
I think it's very popular, at least for the time.
It's all good because the movie came out in the 80s.
Yeah.
See, it fits the criteria. We never said it had to be 80 songs.
No, we didn't. No, we for sure didn't. Because obviously our back-to-backs there, we got good. Yeah, Eddie and the Cruisers, I think was actually supposed to be kind of a takeoff of Elvis, right? I mean, wouldn't you say? I haven't seen that movie in 30-some years probably, but
it just kind of reminded me like, because back then The Outsiders had just come out.
Oh yeah. No, I've seen that a lot.
Yeah. And so I think maybe it was kind of a, hey, let's try to get on the curtails of that popular stuff, with the Greasers and the Sos and all that crap. But
what do you got?
So the movie that I snuck into, which is a rated R movie. So I thought I was, doing something so horribly bad at the time. Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Oh, yeah.
And still to this day. Go ahead.
Oh, you sent me the list, and that was the one I remember that stuck out because I wanted to do that one because there are, but I'm going to let you name them. There's a lot.
There's a ton. I only went with 3 again because we're trying to keep the show at an hour. We don't need to be here all night. You know what I'm saying? With my busy work schedule.
Eddie and the Cruisers kind of picked up a little slack there because there was only like really one, so we didn't have to go too deep on that.
It's a one-hit wonder almost. All right, so of course the movie's title's sake, "Fast Times at Ridgemont High" by Sammy Hagar.
Yeah, and I love him. I still love Sammy.
I loved Sammy when he was solo. Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for him with Van Halen. I didn't dislike him. It didn't do it for me. Mm-hmm. That's all.
Yeah, he had a lot of people like that I've talked to didn't even know like what he's saying that he had solo hits, but he was like in heavy metal. He he had a
lot of songs in there.
I Can't Drive 55. Like I don't know how people forgot about that.
Right. Three Lock Box,
which that's a great song. And then he also did, he came out with, I can't think of the name of the band he was with. At the same time Van Halen was up and coming in California, Montrose. He was the lead singer of Montrose, and he had songs there that he went solo, and he actually was the one that wrote the Rick Springfield hit. I think he had it on his like maybe 79 album. I think it was like Sammy Hagar. See what he had: Standing Hampton, Three Lock Box, and I Can't Drive, Voice of America, VOA. But at that point, he had written "I've Done Everything for You," and then years later, Springfield, I think maybe in '82, had a hit with that off of that Working Class Dog album.
I actually remember Sammy Hagar singing that song, or hearing him sing that song. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it sounds identical to it. It just didn't. I guess I guess they weren't reaching because Springfield, he's got some hits. He's put together some hits, but nothing like Jesse's Girl. I think maybe they were reaching for something else to sell that Working Class Dog album.
Let's face it, man. He was a soap opera star, and he sold records because chicks wanted to bang him.
Yeah. You go back and look at that hairdo, and you think, why?
Why? Now I know why we have a hole in the ozone layer. Dude bought stock in Aquanet, man.
Oh.
So here's one that's obscure, but if you were kind of into the punk scene, you might, well, I guarantee you would know it, but Goodbye by Oingo Boingo.
Yeah. And people forget Oingo Boingo, which is Danny Elfman, right? And he does like major, he's like Thomas Newman or John Williams. He does, he's a composer now, right? He does like music, the theme songs, the scores and stuff like that. But, Oingo Boingo is a huge band, early 80s.
Oh, yeah, man. They were in Weird Science.
Dead Man's Party.
Yep.
And they were kind of considered punk, which is crazy because I listened to punk back then. I loved them. And, people thought the Clash were punk, and not really, man. Fear was punk. Dead Kennedys was punk.
Rancid.
There were some real punk bands out there, but I wouldn't have considered Oingo Boingo really one. But they were.
In the 80s, Rancid was punk.
That was late 80s though, right? Like coming into the 90s, more or less.
Yeah, because they started kind of crossing over mainstream into the 90s. But you had the Dead Kennedys, the Butthole Surfers, and
the Cramps, right?
Those were hardcore punk bands, man. But anyway, and then this was the song that was pretty much throughout the whole movie. Whenever the one female lead character was getting banged, and it was Somebody's Baby by Jackson Browne.
Yeah, and it's a great song.
It is.
Yeah, he was in his prime then, right? He was coming off of Running on Empty, and he killed it with that too. Wasn't him? No, never mind. I'll let you say it.
All right.
Great song though.
I'm never minding. But yeah, every time I hear that song, I can just picture that broad getting banged in the dugout here in the
Jennifer Jason Leigh, right? And that was her first. She was on the freaking dugout bench, and that's kind of one of those last American Virgin shows too, because it's kind of depressing in a way. Damone, right? Isn't Damone the
Simone?
Simone. My favorite scene is when they get in the locker room brawl and Damone, come on, and he puts his dukes up, and it's like 1930 style. That was right. Yeah.
So I probably could have put that whole album down too.
Well, what else is on there? Because I know there was quite a bit. Like American Girl, was it Tom Petty?
Yeah. Tom Petty. The Cars was on there. God, there were so many, dude. But again, in the interest of time, I didn't put them all down because we could talk about all of them all night. Let's see. There we go. All right, so there is Love Rules by Don Henley. So Much in Love, Timothy B. Schmidt. Speeding by the Go-Go's. Highway Runner by Donna Summer. I'll Leave It Up to You by Poco. Love is the Reason, Graham Nash. Don't Be Lonely, Quarter Flash. Which I don't remember that song. I went back and looked that up.
Quarter Flash?
Yeah.
Yeah, they were...
that song...
Treat Me Right. Wasn't that Quarter Flash?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they had that one album. I actually had that tape. I bought that tape when it came out. They were like they kind of sounded a lot like Pat Benatar, right?
Yes.
Kind of like the...
Yeah, they're kind of competing. Uptown Boys, Never Surrender by Don Felder. Fast Times by Billy Squier. Raised on the Radio by the Ravens. Sleeping Angel by Stevie Nicks. So
okay.
There was just a lot, man. And then Jimmy Buffett's song, I Don't Know. And then they titled that Spicoli's theme song.
Okay.
Mr. Hand.
Yeah.
The way I see it, Mr. Hand.
Right.
If it's your time and it's my time, doesn't that make it our time?
Yeah, very good, dude. Yeah. That's it. Great movie.
Fantastic movie. Yeah, so that was my first movie I ever snuck into. I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations is running out on that.
Yeah, you'll be okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. Um, yeah. God, I got a lot here. I probably wrote down way too much, but here's one. I think it's going to be a little bit later, 80s. I actually just watched the movie the other night, and my wife had never seen it, so we were laughing our ass off. Well, she was staring at her phone, but I was laughing just going back and thinking about it. Like, it's great. The soundtrack's great, but I think a lot of people will know this, and a lot of people our age probably had the tape, and that's the Lost Boys.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. We watched that just a couple of weeks ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, dude, isn't freaking David Kiefer Sutherland's character just so fucking cool, dude? Like, it took me back because I remember watching that. I was in high school. And I remember going, man, I was just telling my wife, I wish I had hair like that, and those earrings and that style. And, now, I remember all the girls, they liked Jason Patrick's character, the
brother or whatever.
The brother, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was always like, how do you not think that Kiefer's like just the guy, And now I look back and go, okay, he's more conventional. I get it. As a kid, you don't think like that. Right. But so there's a lot of songs on there. In Excess, Jimmy Barnes, they sing the song, which I still love, Good Times, still holds up. Echo and the Bunnymen were on there. I don't know how I love them back in the day. People Are Strange, that's what they sang. And then this guy, Gerard McMahon. But the songs, it's pretty much all throughout the movie. So I think they kind of turn it into score, but they also give the theme, the actual song. I think that's when they're first taking flight or learning. There's like a scene where they're up above the clouds or whatnot, but that's called Cry Little Sister. And I think everybody would know that if they heard it. And then there's now I didn't look this up, but do you remember the saxophone player with he was like greased up. He had like
Oh yeah. He's kind of a ripped dude, right?
Yeah, 80s ripped, right? Like he's got that, like he works out, but he's not, skipping all of his meals. Yeah.
He's still drinking beer on the side.
Yeah, because that's a famous scene because he's playing the saxophone and people really digging in on it. But that song was called "I Still Believe," which it says Tim Capello, but I want to say, and I'm probably wrong, but do you remember the band The Call? They did I Don't Want to Work.
Oh yeah. I just want to bang on my drum all day.
I just want to bang on. They had a lot of hits. 40 Days, 40 Nights. I'm pretty sure they sang that. I didn't get a chance to look it up, but it says Tim Capello. I don't know if that's the sax player, and maybe they thought he did it, but I think The Call did do that. That
dude's I remember looking that up after we watched this movie a couple of weeks ago because I was like, man, is that dude just is he a real sax player or is he just some meathead that they pulled into, as an extra? But he's a legit saxophone player.
Is he really?
Yeah. Wow. He's got like albums and shit and played in different bands, but I don't know how he got on there. He must have known somebody or something.
Yeah, Johnson & Johnson.
Yeah, he was on somebody's Johnson.
Dude, that is freaking like, how much baby oil do you think is... Right? I mean, there's a lot of baby oil on him. I mean, if he would have fallen on stage, he would have slid like...
Have you ever seen the movie The Ladies' Man?
God, years ago. That's Saturday Night Live, right?
Such a dumb movie, but it's funny. It just reminds me of when he's talking to Will Ferrell's character, and he says, "And clearly, Lance, you're gay, and that's cool and all, but you tried to oil me up, and that wasn't cool."
That's not Tim. What's that guy's name? Tim
Meadows.
Tim Meadows. That's so good, dude. That's a good impersonation. I like that.
Just reminds me of Baby Oil with the sax player. Whatever. That's not.
But that was a popular album. I thought, I know a lot of people own that.
I almost picked that one, but I had a feeling that you were going to.
Really?
So, I just had a feeling. So
okay.
But that's got great songs on it for sure, man. I'm not a huge Doors fan.
Yeah, and they're in that too. Yeah, they're. But I didn't.
People Are Strange is just there's something about that song that I just kind of
Well, that was actually Echo and the Bunnymen. They sang that, I believe.
Oh, they did it. They did their version.
That, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a Doors song.
But every time I hear them Doors, that's like one of the few Doors songs that I actually like.
Yeah, they're pretty hit or miss. I think they've kind of fallen out of popularity a bit, and I don't know why. But back in the '90s, Val Kilmer did that movie, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then they kind of hung around for a bit, and then I was just thinking about them the other day, and I thought they didn't really hold up, did they? They weren't like Pink Floyd's,
no,
which or the
Stones or the Who.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they kind of fizzled, man.
For sure. Which I'm kind of grateful for because I kind of got. I never understood it. I mean, I'm not saying they're bad. The end from Apocalypse Now.
Right.
They start out the movie with that helicopter scene, and that's a fitting, perfect song for that movie. And I think I probably like the song more because I liked that movie so much. But other than that,
it was almost like they wrote that song just for that movie. It was the perfect marriage.
Perfect.
Other than that, I don't really care for the song.
Yeah,
it's got to be in that setting.
Mm-hmm.
That's like, I don't know if it was you that was telling about one of the Marvel movies. They used a Led Zeppelin song for a fight scene.
They do. I know the movie because that's probably one of the last stupid Marvel movies I've ever seen. But Ragnarok, yeah,
yes,
and that was actually done well in that. That was a good movie. It was done well, but yeah, I've checked out for Marvel. That would probably be the only thing I remember about that because I remember thinking, what a great place for Led Zeppelin.
No doubt, man.
Because they had so many hits, but to pick that one, put it in that scene, and I think they play the whole song. It's pretty unbelievable,
too,
man. That was that's the best thing about a Marvels right there.
No doubt. When you first told me about that, I was like, man, I don't know how that would fit. And then I watched it, and I was like, oh my God, it just works, man.
Right.
Who would have thought it?
Plant and Jimmy Page, and man, those guys just. There's a band, right? Like people always talk the Beatles. I think it's I'm not a big Beatles fan. I know that people really get into them, but I don't see how you couldn't put Zeppelin on that. They just didn't get that. They're huge, but it's kind of the same. The hits are all there. They got tons and tons of hits, and they were only together for a brief period. I think they reformed again a little later in the 90s, but I don't think they were together. Like the Beatles were together, like 8 years? I think Zeppelin 6, maybe I want to say, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I tell you, man, I am also one of the few that you can sit here and tell me that you're not that impressed by the Beatles, and I won't berate you over it because I agree. They don't do it for me. I mean, they've had some good songs, sure, but I'm not. They don't trip my trigger.
It's like I get it. I get why people like them. I understand it. The fact that they were together for such a short time and produced massive amount of hits. It just isn't really my style. It's not. You're never going to hear me driving around in my car with Beatles cranked up, or it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, you might hear it for a split second before I change the station. So my last pick was a movie that it's kind of a cult classic, And if you grappled in high school or middle school in any way, shape, or form, so with me, I tried out for wrestling my senior year, but before that, I had been doing judo since I was a young kid. Vision Quest is the movie. It just motivates the crap out. I don't know what. It's just an awesome movie.
Yeah, I had that tape. I had it for John Waite. I think his first hit on solo, and it was Change.
Yes.
MTV had that video on repeat, and I think at that time, the only way to get that song until later on, he released his Essentials in the early '90s was via that soundtrack. So that's why I bought it, but the soundtrack was loaded, right?
Oh yeah, man. I could have put every single song on there, man. I've worn that. I had a cassette and I wore it out. That's how much I played it. But every time, I tell you what, even as recent as 5-6 years ago is when I was still competing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu overseas. I still had that song "Lunatic Fringe," and I would listen to it before
Red
every
Rider,
match.
right?
Yep,
And
Red
then
Rider.
Tom Cochran, he was the lead singer, came out later on with the song that everybody knows, "Life Is a Highway."
Yeah. So that even to this day, it's still relevant to me. And I just watched that movie again, maybe 2-3 months ago.
Okay.
And
yeah. Shoot.
Yep. Shoot. It's
Shoot.
it's class. It's timeless to me.
Yeah. You want to know something that's crazy about that movie? Is there's a guy in there that every girl loved in the 80s, but I don't think many people knew that he was in that movie because he was so huge coming off of one show, 16 Candles. And that's Jake Ryan, who ends up being his best friend.
Mohawk dude.
Mohawk, who if you watch the movie, you get a vibe of there's some brother love, right? I mean, he's kind of right. Isn't there kind of like they insinuate that maybe he's gay, right? He kind of.
I think maybe it was just a lot of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they were trying to insinuate that he was gay, but because then he takes, he freaks out when he meets Carla and is like, oh gosh, she's so hot, So
she was hot. Linda Fiorentino, right? God damn, she was smoking.
So maybe there's just some confusion there, He's because they didn't really develop his character at all. So it's hard to say.
They didn't. It just is the wrestling buddy that
got the shit kicked out of him,
right?
By his dad. And,
yep.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's a great movie. What were this? So there was Journey, right?
Journey was on there. Only the Young, Madonna. Yeah. So Madonna had 2 songs on there.
Okay, what were they?
Crazy for You.
Oh yeah.
And Gambler.
Okay.
Which I like Gambler way better than I do Crazy for You.
Yeah, she's one of cool. She's one of those that I would never tell people I like. It's kind of like, but I have her on a Grady 80s Grady's kind of playlist. But I have 200 in my defense. I have 200 songs on there. She was bound to get on there, but I have a few. On there. I liked the 80s version of Madonna. I didn't like the 90s version. No. And Forward. Yeah. It switches with Like a Prayer, right? Yeah. When she sings that song, it's like everything just went to hell. Next thing you know, she's freaking speaking. She's got an English accent. She's freaking living, and she's too good. Yeah, that was quite the switch. Yeah, I lost respect. But there was something else on that album too, right? So John Waite Change, which I was a big John Waite fan. Foreigner. I'm sorry. Go ahead, John Waite. No, go ahead. Foreigner. Well, I was going to say John Waite. He later on did. If Anybody Had a Heart on the About Last Night movie with Rob Lowe. Who was it? Rob Lowe and Demi Moore, right? Demi Moore. Yeah, James Belushi. And he had a song on there. I think maybe that's it. But he kind of had his little run at the... Yeah, he seemed to be in quite a few of the 80s movies. That's kind of... I don't want to say that's how he made it, but it definitely didn't hurt his career. No, I think he was already set with the Babies, right? And then he came out in the 80s, did a solo thing with Missing You, and that was that song was a massive hit. I think people, if you didn't grow up then and you were to say one song that I heard all the freaking time, it was that. I mean, when that song came out, it seemed like they played it every other song for sure. Oh yeah, easily twice every half hour. Yeah, easily, for sure. And that doesn't sound like much, but damn, that's a lot. Yeah, well, because if you think about it, I want to say it was probably 83, 84, right? And we've covered the greatest years in music, so that would have probably put it right around that area, right? So think about that. If you were getting played, that you got that much airplay, and you were in that zone. Is that your tummy? Yeah, that's my freaking dog. It's my little girl dog. She's out there. I was gonna let her in here with me, but you should have. Yeah. Well, she would have just wanted to get petted and complained, and she's a whiner. Yeah. Never mind. Hungry for Heaven by Dio. No shit.
Yep. Hungry for Heaven. And in fact, he's I can remember again in that movie, when he's out there running, they've got that song playing.
So that had to be before his Last in Line album, right? Because he just came off Black Sabbath, I would guess. Because he replaced Ozzy for Black Sabbath.
Right. Let me see.
And then he went to Dio. Was it Rainbow in the Dark?
Yes.
Dio Rainbow. And then he did I would say that was probably.
So Hungry for Heaven came out in 85.
Okay, so that was after Last in Line. Because Last in Line had to be like 83. I would guess.
Yeah. Yep, came out in 85. So we covered Madonna. Hot Blooded by Foreigner.
Mm-hmm. It seems like they're getting in there quite a bit, Foreigner.
Yep. Well, they were, early 80s. They were rocking it, man.
Yeah.
Before they went soft. So, Jesus
what was Waiting for a Girl Like You? That was that's still played, right? They still put that in commercials and shit. But,
that's how you know you're old.
Yeah, dude. You want to know something funny about them is I was never a big Foreigner fan, but then Lou Gramm went solo. Do you remember that? He went solo and he did Midnight Blue.
Yep.
And that would have been probably 87, 88, around that time. And that song was I loved it. I think everybody loved that song. So I got that one, and then he came out with another one later on. I can't remember what it's called, but he kind of went the way of almost like a Phil Collins.
Oh.
But it was like Just Between You and Me and stuff like that. But I love the album back then. I've listened to it since. It doesn't hold up. It's not quite as good as I thought it was, but it's
that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Remember his hair? Do you remember that he had like that perm, but it was like a permanent perm?
Yeah.
Looked like Richard Simmons, but like
his
like
more masculine brother.
Right. Yeah.
So real quick, I'm just gonna have one honorable mention.
Okay.
And this I picked this movie. I saw maybe half of it. Didn't like it. I thought the movie sucked. But it was a great soundtrack. If you are a Motown lover, then this movie is the movie for you, possibly. And that honorable mention is The Big Chill.
Oh, shit, dude. That's a good one.
And so
that could have been... That's a great... God damn, dude. I can't believe I forgot about that. Oh, say, I got to interrupt you for this because my buddy, so every day to school, my best friend, his mom had one of those, remember those vans like you could live in? They were like a home.
Oh, yeah.
Like
conversion vans.
Yeah, conversion van, yeah. So every day she'd take us to school, and that movie had just come out, and that album was great, like Marvin Gaye, Heard It Through the Grapevine, and I had never heard those songs before. And she would play that really? Every freaking day. And it was one of those albums where I was like, man, they started to grow on me. Kind of music that I didn't think ever would. That's a good one. I like that.
I loved the soundtrack on it, man. I couldn't get into the movie. And I think looking back is because I was too young to understand that it was mainly about a bunch of adults dealing with adult crap. And so I wasn't.
Suicide, right? Yeah.
I don't watch the whole
Costner's
thing.
first role, right? One of them. He was the guy, the friend that killed himself. Yeah. What were the songs on there? I know Marvin Gaye, Pointer Sisters, maybe.
Purposefully did not write them down because of the fact that I didn't want to. I just wanted to give it an honorable mention.
Okay.
If you're interested in it, you the listener or whoever's out there, you can check it out. But if it's definitely Motown heavy.
Very, yeah. And there's a lot of dancing. It's been years since I've seen the movie. It was on remember HBO do that little loop we talked about, and that would be on. That fucking movie was on all the time. And who was in it? Kevin Kline, William Hurt. There was a bunch of people in it, but
Beth Williams.
You know what? I'm going to pull that up, and it's probably not my style of music, but it probably give me a lot of memories. But
I might actually go back and watch the movie now that I would be able to understand it. Maybe I'll enjoy it.
Yeah, that and Chariots of Fire. Why don't you try both of those?
Yeah, I'm gonna put Chariots of Fire right up there with that one.
Hey, that could have been
movie
the
that I
soundtrack because that
blocked.
was a huge song. Remember
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay, so I got
The piano concerto that they were.
yeah, I got one. I'm gonna. This is gonna take. I gotta say it. I like the show. I watch it with my kids. If you have kids, it's a good show. You can get away with watching it if you have kids. But Mannequin,
Oh man,
you.
that's a guilty pleasure, dude.
I can put that on. It's like background noise, but that song, nothing's gonna stop us now. It was pretty much the theme song for that, and but they had other ones on there. But Belinda Carlisle did "In My Wildest Dreams," and I think that's the very first when they're doing the cartoon and all the jazz, getting into that. But Starship had "Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now," and then they had "Laying It on the Line," which they ended up, I believe, it was like a lead song into their album that same year. And another tape that my brother absolutely loved. So I heard that song so many times. And now, and then there's one that people would probably, they don't know who the singer is, but Alicia sang, "Do You Dream About Me?" And that's the scene. Remember when they're doing the Mannequin, they're flying, hang gliding through the mall, and they're dancing, and then Kim Cattrall, because back then, dude, she was, I mean, you wouldn't know it by looking at her today. But back then, she was
pretty hot. I had a crush on her, man.
Well, yeah, dude, we did, because remember that was like the first, like one of the first sex scenes I had ever seen outside of Porky's. She was in Porky's 1, and you actually get some, you get a little bit of Bush, a little bit of everything on that. She's the one that howls. Remember when the guy goes, "Why do they call her?" Yeah, Lassie. That's it. Yeah, but you get the whole scene on her, and then a couple years later, I think she did with Timothy. Timothy Hutton.
Sounds about right.
She did Turk 182. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And that was like when she goes down. I remember because I was a young kid, and she feels underneath the sheets and touches him, and my mind's when she's like, "Oh," you're like, "Oh," and I was like, "Ooh," like. So yeah, me and Control, we got quite the past, but she was in a ton of stuff, like even television, Tales of the Gold Monkey. I remember she was in a few of those.
Tales of Spanking the Monkey. What?
Tales of Spanking the Monkey. There was a lot. I just seen her in something else I just watched, and she was young. Oh, do you remember Logan's Run?
Yeah.
She was in the series. I think it was probably like episode 7. She was in it, and she looks real super young in that. But yeah, that's one of them. And then, are you going to list any more? Because I got a couple more I can just run off. We don't have to go into the songs.
I'm done.
I wanted to get Streets of Fire in there. Remember that? And that was Bonnie Tyler, I believe, right? But if it wasn't, it should have been, because the songs were really.
It was either Bonnie Tyler or Kim Carnell.
Kim Carnell.
Remember.
Yeah, I didn't put that down.
Because they had
Dan Harmon. Remember Dan Harmon? "I Can Dream About You." I can.
Oh yeah.
That was a huge one, right? And one of my favorites from the 80s was in that. God dang it, I can't think of her name right now, but she was in Just One of the Guys. Joyce Heiser.
Yeah, that was a good movie.
Joyce Heiser, remember? So she was in that video.
That's how it all started right there.
Yeah.
This whole trans whatever thing, it's all because of that movie.
Yep. Probably is. And then I had, the Revenge of the Nerds one. Because they had, and that was a pretty popular one, although I can't remember any of the songs. I remember, what I remember was when, I can't think of his name, but they were dancing at the party, and it was a gay guy. Lamar, and he's dancing. I like to watch people in older movies dance, and I even watch the background people dance. And you hear the music and you see them dance, and then I'll go back and it's only like for a split second, but him and that guy are just dancing together to. That's a great.
It was a stupid movie, but I can't tell you how many times I watched it.
Yeah, so that's a rape, right? Like I was talking with a buddy of mine, just the other day, and that's rape by deception, I think, is actually the legal term. But when he puts on the Darth Vader mask, and he gets her into the. Remember, he takes her and he's under the.
You had to drag it there, didn't you?
I did. Okay, I'm taking it off. But it's funny because we just brought that up, and I thought, yeah, that really is something that just kind of slipped by. Nobody thought nothing of it. Not even me as a kid, but and then this one, I know that everybody heard St. Elmo's Fire. Remember that? I watched that show because that was like right when I was going into. I must have been in junior high, and Rob Lowe's like in his prime, and all those guys, the Brat Pack, were so big. And then there was the song by John Parr, Man in Motion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was on the radio all the freaking time. But it was one of those ones that I didn't own the album, but I'll bet if you did, you were probably pretty upset. You were. It was one of those ones where you're like, okay.
What are you talking about? It was a great album, man. They had right,
and then. So I was going to put it on the list. I thought that had to have some hits, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that on the list. I'm just going to put it there, and then I'm going to fill in the blank. And then I went, I stopped at Man in Motion. I was like, I don't even know, and I don't think I'm going to go listen to it. So to pick it out, but that was some extra ones. The Lost Boys. I put Eddie and the Cruisers. Oh, I know one I thought of, and I was going to do it, but I didn't because I must have overlooked it. But I know you're going to love this one. I know you're going to appreciate it. The Wall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we forget that was a movie.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people do, but that was an album. It had Another Brick in the Wall. It had Mother. It had Comfortably Numb. It had
It's
Hey
a great album.
Yes, and it's a long album.
It's very long.
Yes, but that was a movie, right? That was like one of their efforts. I think they produced that, and that's one I don't think that people think about when they think that that's technically a soundtrack. I mean, I guess it is how you look at it, but there's at least 4 huge hits. Comfortably Numb, right? That's huge.
One of my favorites, man.
Yeah, and I knew that you'd like that. And then, of course, I think the one we left out that if anybody was watching this, and they'd probably say, "How the hell did you not say that?" Well, I'm going to Purple Rain.
I looked at that, and I almost picked it, but it was just too obvious to me.
It's very obvious, but I don't think you can get, there's a lot of them that were obvious. We didn't really go into Top Gun, obviously, because it's too obvious. There's a lot of them that were really obvious. Purple Rain is for sure.
Purple Rain is sure. It's so good. You don't need to talk about it. I mean, it's just that good. Not the movie, but the soundtrack.
Yeah, dude, the movie, I've seen that so many times back in the day, but I don't think I've seen it since probably 86, right? That came out, maybe 85.
I haven't seen it either. Many
I don't think I will ever again because I'll leave it as a good part of my memory. But that had, Let's Go Crazy, Purple Rain, When Doves Cry, I Would Die for You. And then there was, of course, it was just filled with them. And it was probably more of a great album than it would be considered a soundtrack, but it was a soundtrack, So
it was definitely a soundtrack, but it was a great album too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
I think Nikki was on there, right? Darling Nikki. Yeah.
Yeah, Darling Nikki, and that wasn't that like the masturbation one?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember. Had that tape. I remember I had 2 tapes that came out at the exact same time, and that one, and then I had the Billy Squier Faces and Motion of Faces. It was the one where he did that crazy video where he's running around his apartment. Acting,
oh yeah.
What the hell was that?
I
can't think of it right now, but I had that. I remember those 2 tapes I was listening to, and of course, Purple Rain was way better. That was about the end of Billy Squier, I think. Those of you that don't know about it, look that up. I'm going to look up the song, but look up the video if you want to see how really a musical genius. He was a great guitarist. He had the Stroke.
He had a small resurgence when Billy Madison came out.
Did he? For what?
For Stroke.
The Stroke? Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. Albums. Emotions in Motion.
Yes.
And the song was no, that's not it. That's because that had Everybody Wants You. So that was still, he was still in his prime. Signs of Life. That's
Signs
it.
of
So
Life. That must be it because I don't even remember hearing about that one.
yeah, the name of it was Rock Me Tonight. So anybody listening, anybody that wants to see probably the end of a guy's career.
Right.
And I'm not shitting when I say that because that was it. I remember watching, like, he had all those hits, and if you doubt it, go back and listen to his albums. They were great, and he was on the radio all the time. I think he was even in quite a bit of on a lot of soundtracks, but he came out with that song "Rock Me Tonight," and he did that. So there's a story behind it. If we got the time, if not, I mean, it's just a quick one. But
Yeah.
okay, he that was when MTV was really making an impact, and the director, God, dude, something. Maybe I'm wrong. I want to say maybe David Fincher, but I think I'm wrong on that. I think I'm thinking of something else. But the director said, "Hey, here's what you got to do. It's a good song, but then if you watch the video, even like the 12-year-old me was going, something's off here. Like, and he didn't mean to do it. He was told to do it, but it ruined his career. And I can't remember him ever being back.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so while you're looking that up, I'll go ahead and help you out a little bit. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, freaks and weirdos, whatever you want to call yourselves, don't care. Be sure to join us on Friday night for Nothing's Off the Table. It's a podcast that's hosted by yours truly and myself. We'll be along with Lou Del Pre, and it's going to be a cool episode. We're going to talk about paranormal stuff. So this Friday coming up at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, we'll be live, Facebook, YouTube, simultaneously streaming. Come catch us. We'll have the phone lines up. We'll have the chat open, and we'd love to hear your experiences. Love to hear if you believe in it, or if you don't believe, you think it's a bunch of crap. I don't care. Join us Friday night.
So yeah, that'd be neat, right?
It'd be a fun one.
Yeah.
Fun one. And then, did you find what you were looking for?
I already did. I read it off like fucking 15 minutes ago before you went into your plugging yourself.
Oh,
you know?
right, well, I got another
on my
plug.
Time.
On your time. Wait a minute. If it's your time and it's my time, isn't it our time?
Remember the pizza when he orders the pizza and they bring the pizza in and fucking starts handing out.
Gives it away. That'd have been so.
I gotta go back and catch it. I watched that during COVID. Yeah, that's a Cameron. What's his name? Did
that's that one guy.
Almost Famous.
Yeah, that one guy.
Yeah, that one guy. Yeah. No, he's actually.
He did that other movie.
I think he did Singles. He got on quite
in that one movie.
One movie. Yeah.
He had he used to direct all those. You know, that one actor and that actress girl.
Right.
You know. Yeah. Hey, so I know you know this, but maybe some of the folks out there don't know this. That I started back to school.
Mm-hmm.
On Monday. So I'm going back and I'm getting my master's in counseling and life coaching. And so, I got my textbook here, this wonderful, it's the Introduction to Human Services Through the Eyes of Practice Settings, 5th edition. And this is what it looks like. And it's written by a lady named Dr. Michelle E. Martin. And let me tell you, I've gotten through the first 2 chapters, and already this is exactly what you need if you're looking for a democratic playbook on how to ruin your kids' views in school. I couldn't get through. There's a big section. I think I might have sent it to you.
Yeah,
Ryan,
you said, was that the one where they were talking
privilege?
About white privilege? Yeah.
Oh my God, it's like I'm gonna have a hard time. I think this semester just because I can't. Crap that's in this book is I'm going to send a nice little critique to the author.
I always get a kick out of that because no matter what you believe, if you turn those words around and said like it's basically you're kind of stereotyping in a way, and you're saying that everybody's white privilege. I can tell you, I've seen firsthand some people that aren't that are white have zero privilege, and I know you have too.
Mm.
But it's kind of a nice way of saying, kind of picking apart a certain race, right? And
Yeah.
saying if the ride's over, and it is what it is. But I guess great if that's what if you think that's good for society.
It just really, I had a hard time getting through the reading assignment because of that, and it is just so obviously biased towards the left liberal mindset,
Yeah,
and it's just bashing. I mean, they're talking about how they're talking about how great the Affordable Care Act was.
mm-hmm.
And how bad and evil Trump was. And I'm like, come on, man. What are we freaking... What does that have to do with this course?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just think they slip it in anytime they can. Like it's an interesting thing, man. Because I have a few buddies that are far on the left, and it's always the same thing. If you talk about like the fact that I just seen a headline the other day that Joe Biden has spent 40% of his presidency on vacation. And so I just sent the article. Yahoo wrote it, man. And when Yahoo's writing that article, they're probably still lying, right? So I just sent it out to him, knowing the response that I would get, and I got it back. Sure enough, it was it just had something about Trump, like and I said, I go, typical, right back to Trump, like that's not going to change the fact, but they're still riding on that stuff from 3 years ago. They, that's the one thing. I think if you got to like Trump for anything, it's the fact that he's just, still renting space in the heads of so many people for free. And man, I don't know how somebody could bother you that much. I don't get it.
I don't either.
I don't get it at all.
Let it go.
Yeah.
There's more important things in life,
Well, a lot of more important things. I just watched a video right before I got on this with some guy who, I think he went to a Trump sign, and he was on his tennis speed. He's out getting some exercise, and he started kicking the sign, and then he came back like hours later and tried to light it on fire. So he's like basically it's his arson. He tries to light the thing on fire, and then he takes off and leaves after he kind of gets it going. Now, granted, it was just a sign, but we just watched what happened in Maui with the telephone wire hitting some freaking dry mulch or whatnot. So the idea that you're so righteous and so good, and you can, that I guess that's what they feed on, is that I'm on the good side, but then you turn around and do something like that, you're not a good person. Like,
right. What makes you think? Yeah, I'm tracking, dude. What makes you think that that's a good idea?
Yeah, it's arson, right? And what happens if, let's just say that place does go up in smoke, kind of like Maui, and then all of a sudden you burn down a whole city for what? To burn a guy's sign that you don't like, who's obviously affected you way more than you probably should have, but that's the media, man. That's what they've done with the whole, this just keep you, this is 3 years. He hasn't been a president, and that's still all they talk about. It's unbelievable. I mean, this guy's building up like a legacy like nothing we've ever seen before. And, the comparisons to Hitler and all sorts of other dictators. Like, first off, if you know history, you can't make that comparison. It's not even close by any stretch.
I like how the fascists are calling other people fascists.
That's what it is, man. And that's, like I say so often, it's racist. It's using racism to fight racism. It's using hate to fight hate. It's using, it's just doing all of those things to do. These are the same bullies for the most part that were the ones that would have, and when we grew up, picking on kids that were different. But it's a little harder to do that today. So they found another convenient way, and it's a perfect way if you think about it. It's a perfect way to look like a good guy but still be a fucking asshole at the same time.
That's right. Speaking of assholes, I think I'm touching cotton, so we should probably wrap this up.
Right, yeah.
But anyway, we're not going to do these live all the time, but this was a fun little episode that we had so many people come into the chat room and talk with us on. Oh wait, no, we didn't.
Yeah, but I was waiting. I was waiting for some. I was trying to rummage up some help while we were waiting, and we didn't get any. Even my wife, who I said, I go, you're probably gonna want to watch what is it, the general debates
The
today?
debate.
And I said, but if you could maybe log in and I don't know, participate, then you can log back off and nothing. Fuck crickets.
Right. It's all good. It is what it is. It was fun. We'll do it again at some point. We'll do a better job of promoting it first, though, so that we have some people.
And I think for the most part, too, like for those that aren't listening and that maybe watch this later and go, wow, crickets. We wanted to also get a feel for the new format that we're trying to do. And like, obviously, we're not together now. We're not sitting in the same, not together. You know, we've had some problems. We weren't giving it up enough. But no, we weren't. You know, we decided we could do this. And then my setup is, I got a setup here, but it's a little bit lacking because we didn't have the time to get to it. But this was a good way to kind of dip our toes in, I think.
Yeah.
And then see how you like it, how we like it. But I think that's what it is, just kind of a dry run, so to speak.
Yeah.
And talk about shit we love. Like the Mannequin soundtrack.
Oh my God. I love that movie.
Okay, so as a kid. Okay. You can end it any time, but it's good, right? I mean, it's
all right. Good night, everybody.
But it's good, right? Now, anybody, I'm going to go ahead and say it because no one's listening. But
literally,
it's literally, so no one can go, wow. He didn't strike me as a mannequin guy, but I like it.
But I mean, we're kids, you know, and again, it goes back to that HBO loop thing we talked about. It was on all the time, so
all the time.
I can remember in the summer staying up late as a kid watching it, and then 3-4 hours later, hey, it's on again. I'm gonna watch it again.
Yeah, and he's kind of a. But anyway. I read his memoir, Andrew McCarthy, a couple years ago. I was never a big fan of his, but the more you think about it, he's in Pretty in Pink, he's in a Mannequin. And he's in one of them. I love this show, Weekend at Bernie's. Not the one that's going on, not the one that's happening at the White House right now.
Right,
but the actual movie. I love that movie. And he's in that. We tried to stomach, we had a couple, so we watched Weekend at Bernie's during the summer. And then a couple weeks later, my wife goes, let's do the Weekend at Bernie's 2. And I said, man, I can't say I remember that. So we started watching it. And dude, I mean, it's tough, right? There's not a lot for nostalgic purposes I can't kind of swallow, but I looked at her like halfway through and I said, man, I'm kind of tired. I go, you think we should yeah. And I go, should you want to bring this up to the room? And she's like, no. And I'm like, yeah. So that's how we kind of got out of it. It's bad.
It's horrible. Bad. Anyway, all right, folks. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you. Yeah, good times.